everybody.
Hey!
This is Recotopia episode 40.
Wow.
My name is Chris Atkinson.
And I'm Jeremy Scott.
Yes. Today's big recommend is going to be Eep Man from 2008. Can't wait to get into that. And chat is going, although admittedly seems kind of sparse today. I don't know if it's a Thanksgiving thing or what, but
just wait till
maybe
next week.
Maybe they just hate us.
I think it's probably just a sleepy day.
Could be. But maybe it's just slow to trickle in anyway. But glad for those of you who are still here or who are here to join us today on a Tuesday, talking movies and commenting, and now it's really starting to explode. I think it was they just needed to hear our voices, Jeremy.
Yep.
I think that's what happened. Do you have any small recommends?
I do. I've got a couple I'm excited about. There's a new show on HBO Max. It's a cooking reality show called The Big Brunch. And there are 3 episodes out currently, and the new ones will come out every Thursday. I think there are 10 episodes because there are 10 contestants. This is created by and hosted by Dan Levy, one of the creators and stars of Schitt's Creek, son of Eugene Levy. And this is more in the vein of the Great British Bake Off or MasterChef Kids, in that it's a very supportive environment. The contestants are all supporting each other. They help carry each other's dishes to the judges. They hug each other frequently. The judges can be direct. This lacks enough flavor, but they're super supportive, and they're always giving feedback that's constructive. Like, you need to do more of this next time. And so the show is broken down into 2 segments, an appetizer brunch thing and a main brunch thing. And each episode has a theme. So, like, I think the most recent episode 3, is like the hangover brunch. And one of them's like the diner brunch. And the first one was the you brunch. So the first challenge, the appetizer, what first lit your fuse as a food person, make us something like that. And then the second challenge was, where are you going in the future? Because the extra cool thing about this show is they handpicked every contestant, and they all have these like super noble endeavors. Like, one guy got caught up with some crime when he was a teenager, did a little bit of time, and then decided to become a chef, and then opened a school for kids that are in the juvenile system where he teaches them how to cook. Another person wants to do like a vegan cookbook and show that vegan food can actually be tasty. Many of them have nonprofits with various goals. It's really a great way to hook you into these people. Whereas Top Chef, they're just all badass chefs that want to win the money and open their own restaurant. And that's fun. That's my favorite food show for now. But I feel like knowing each person's story and what they're trying to achieve in their culinary journey endears them more to me and to each other. And I think that's why it's such a supportive environment. And I'm loving the hell out of it. I ripped through those first 3 episodes 2 days ago and wished the rest were done. So it's called The Big Brunch. If you like cooking reality shows, it's on HBO Max. Check it out there.
Nice. Man, I feel like, man, there's so much stuff that's just passing me by on all of these streaming services and everything. Yeah. I mean, I know that's the typical old man talk these days, but my God, man, it's just like, I had never heard of this. I have HBO Max, but I've never heard of this. And there's all these shows, and it's like, I think we're at a point now where there's so much content out there. Of course, there's going to be some like great ones that hit too, but we have to find those. We got to know what to use our time on and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I don't feel like I don't have that fear of missing out type of thing. The FOMO, as the kids say.
Right, because there's so much you're missing out on. You will never catch up to all of it.
You'll never catch up.
Everybody has to make choices.
Yeah. You just have to make peace with it. I went to the theaters last week, and I saw The Banshees of Inisherin, and I walked into this movie not knowing a thing about it. I'd heard the title before, but I did not. I knew that it was the new Martin McDonagh movie, I've liked almost everything he's done previously. Like, look at his filmography. We don't talk about this dude enough, probably. Previous movie he made with Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell called In Bruges, which is really good. And this is their sort of their re-team up. And this is an unusual movie, and it's not because it's weird or quirky or anything like that, but it starts off with Colin Farrell going to his buddy Brendan Gleeson's house. Brendan Gleeson they live on this island off of Ireland, and which I guess is called Inisherin. He's way off in the middle of the country, and I think this is like early 20th century or whatever. There's a civil war going on. There's all sorts of stuff happening. Sorry, I don't know the whole history there, but he goes by his buddy's house, and he's like, it's basically like, this is what we do all the time. Basically, he's like, hey, he raps on the door. Hey, I'm going to meet you at the bar later at 2:00. And he doesn't answer. Brendan Gleeson doesn't answer. And he's like, well, what's going on? And Brendan Gleeson just doesn't answer him no matter what he asks. He's like, well, I'll go to the bar and I'll get you a pint and you can join me later or whatever. And he comes back to his wife, played by Carrie Condon, who you may recognize from Better Call Saul. Who plays Mike Ehrmantraut's daughter. He goes back to his wife and he's like, yeah, I went to this guy's house and he didn't even answer me. I just didn't say a word to me. I was doing the normal thing where we go out to the bar and he just didn't say anything. And she's like, well, maybe he doesn't like you anymore or whatever, like really funny. And he goes, oh, weird. And so like the whole like first 20 or 30 minutes, Brendan Gleeson refuses to talk to Colin Farrell, and finally it gets down to the point where it hits sort of a breaking point where Brendan Gleeson just says, I just don't want your company anymore. Just didn't want this. And this is people who probably been friends for years and no explanation. Brendan Gleeson's just like, nah, just don't want to hang out with you anymore. So that's obviously not enough for Colin Farrell. He's got to figure out why. And there's sort of this, like, there's this tension that's always building throughout where he's like he's trying way too hard to be friends with him again, but he can't figure out what it is he needs to do. There's some points where he makes some headway and he's like, well, I'll just be like this all the time now. And he'll want to be around me. And nothing works because Brendan Gleeson is a man of his word. He says, I don't want to hang out with you anymore. He means it. And there's even a point where he says, if you come by my house again, I will cut off a finger, my own finger, every time you do that. And you just try me. And so you kind of forget about this. And Colin Farrell goes and visits him for some reason out of nowhere, and once again makes his plea and like wonders what the hell he did wrong and all this. And Brendan Gleeson says, why did you come out here? Why did you come out here? Before you know it, later on in the movie, Brendan Gleeson comes up to Colin Farrell's house and you hear this boom sound. And he walks off. Colin Farrell walks out and there's a finger sitting there on the front door step. And so like, yeah, it's just a fascinating movie about friendship and why certain people aren't friends anymore. And could you possibly accept it if somebody just ghosted you essentially, like this? This is a like great acting performance from the three principals here: Brendan Gleeson, Colin Farrell, Carrie Condon, who we haven't gotten to see very much of. I saw her in Better Call Saul and maybe a couple of other things. And I've never been able to see like the range of acting she's able to do. And she's great in this. She plays Colin Farrell's, actually I said wife, she's his sister. But that's sort of like how it starts off. You feel like, oh, it's his wife, but no, it's just she's his sister. Probably already been corrected in the comments somewhere on this. But anyway, she's really good. And this movie is fascinating and great. I can't recommend this enough. This is a big, small recommend. So excellent.
I already had this on my radar. I saw the trailer. I love In Bruges. and bruised.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how
Yep.
to say it. There's a clip of these two, Colin Farrell, and the other guy, Brendan Gleeson, on one of
Yeah.
the late night talk shows, and they just get into they're clearly good friends in real life, and they just get
Mm-hmm.
into this super Irish back and forth, and they go for like 90 seconds making themselves crack up. And the
Mm-hmm.
host, I don't even remember, they all run together for me. The host is just kind of like, what's going on here? Like, I
Yeah.
completely lost control of this. I love that their friendship in real life creates great friendship tension in these movies. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I also have a pretty huge small recommend, and this is also a preview because I promise you, one day in the future, this movie will be a big recommend.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen it in maybe 8 or 9 years. 1973's The Sting.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and this is just one of the best con movies of all time. It's Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and the same director from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, George Roy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Robert Redford plays this kind of low mid-level con guy, and basically he and his partners get caught, but his face is not known, and one of his partners is killed. And they basically were ripping off this big-time notorious gangster. So he takes off and goes to Chicago to try and run. And the gangster hears that that guy's gone to Chicago, so he goes to Chicago. Robert Redford has heard of Paul Newman, his character, because of the partner that died, had worked with him in the past. So he looks him up, and they decide to con the big gangster that's coming to town. Uh, and it's hilarious to me that this gangster is both simultaneously plotting with Robert Redford to take down Paul Newman and trying to have that same person killed because he doesn't know that that's also Hooker, the guy he's after.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's basically pretty straightforward con, actually. They have a guy that holds up the race results at Western Union for just long enough, make a phone call, tell somebody who won, they walk across the street, place a bet. And you show this proof of concept a couple of times, and then you get this big time gangster to put a bunch of money down, and you take it. And what I love about this movie is that it doesn't tell you everything, but the things it doesn't tell you aren't exactly tough to figure out. Like,
Yeah.
there's some tension in the story on screen between Newman and Redford's characters that is completely for show. And the whole time you kind of know that, even though you're not 100% sure, it leaves just enough doubt.
Mm-hmm.
It also plays with the identity of this assassin that's been called in to take him out. And I just think it's a very, very straightforward but classic example of a heist movie, a con movie, and we're gonna tear into it one day in the future because I know Chris loves this
Yeah.
movie too.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Robert Shaw's in this one. Robert Shaw, a great bad guy in a lot of movies. Of course, Jaws and everything like that. He's the bad guy in Jaws too. I don't know if you realize that. But no, I love the Sting too. The Sting is great, and Robert Shaw actually ties into something later that happens in this episode. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, I love this, and I can't. If this is ever a big recommend, what a great weekend that's going to be watching that movie and looking stuff up on it and looking at all the history and
Yeah.
and things like that. So. I have another small recommend. I actually watched this about a month or so ago during all of our horror stuff. I bought this movie, Studio 666, the Foo Fighters horror movie, basically, and rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins, unfortunately. But this movie is basically just a straight up comedy. It's got horror elements in it, but it's very simple. The record producers, the record producer, or the label, the Foo Fighters label wants them to come out with a new album soon because he's got money problems, and so like they try to find the best place for them to record, and it's this old house where some other band got slaughtered many years ago, and of course Jenna Ortega was in that band, so she's been in every horror movie in the past 2 years
everywhere.
yeah. yeah, that's what we're led off with on this, is that this band gets slaughtered, and then Foo Fighters decide they're going to record their new album in this house where 25 years ago this horrible murder happened. And so they're all trying to figure out where's the best place to record and all this. And most of the band's like, should we even record here? This isn't even like a great place to record, actually, you know. But Dave Grohl, of course, is like very much like, this has got to be it. This is the place. I can feel it and all that. And of course, exploring the house means that they find this book, and the book basically tells Dave Grohl he has to make this song the way this song is created. This some sort of demon is telling me he has to make this song, and it has to be perfect, you know, or else everybody dies. And so like they're doing this album, and it's really just one song. It starts off being like 8 or 9 minutes, and then we're told that it's like an hour or something long. And the band is like, this is an hour long. Who's going to ever listen to this? And Dave Grohl, who's getting even more and more intense throughout the whole thing, is basically saying we have to do this because he's possessed with a demon. It's very, very simple. It's comedy. It's jokey throughout. I'm not going to tell you it's a good movie. Even it's got a 5.7 on the IMDb, but I believe that most people enjoy this movie. I think you would enjoy this movie, Jeremy. I think it's that kind of thing, where you would just be like, yep, I can get along with this. There is some like over the top cartoonish violence in this movie. But yeah, overall, I kind of enjoyed this.
In an odd coincidence, this was on when I turned my television on this morning.
Really?
And I was like, oh, a horror movie with, at first I thought it was like some sort of music video. I didn't even know this movie existed. But I had to finish Eat Man, so I didn't get a chance to watch it this morning. But I will, next time I turn on my TV and it's on, I'll just stay with it.
I think this is kind of up your alley. Just because it really is one of those that you can just kind of, I've become a big fan of these, by the way, recently. I've been getting on Tubi and watching trying to find the most horrible horror movies that I can find on Tubi late at night to watch, so they don't have to worry about, like, really literally awesome. Just taking your brain out and just saying, all right, let's just watch this and see where it goes. I have seen some of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life. I've had to stick. I had to turn off because how did it ever get made? Anyway, Studio 666 is much better than those Tubi movies I'm talking about, but I've suddenly become very, very like wanted to watch everything that I can get. These old horror comedy movies. So
I love it. I love that new streak. And it sounds like Wrong Turn 5 is something you should add to your list.
I probably should. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't watch those in order. It's more fun to go out of order.
Out of order? Yeah. Watch them backwards. Yeah, yes. That'd be good. Someone asked me if I watched Shark Side of the Moon. Not yet. I will, I'm sure. Our big recommend is Eep Man. Yeah. Go for it, man.
All right, so this is a 2008 Donnie Yen martial arts film about the man who eventually would go on to train Bruce Lee. This is a real person. He was a real master of the Wing Chun. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to mispronounce a bunch of things in this discussion, and I apologize for my overt Americanness in that regard. He would eventually train Bruce Lee. He is a real person, and as the movie begins, he has a very nice house. And I actually, the main great room when you walk in his front door, I freaking love that room.
Yes,
it looks like it costs $1 million, but I love it. It's freaking gorgeous. So he's having dinner with his family, his wife and his young child, and he is so renowned as a martial artist. Not only just in Foshan, where they live, but around China. So this guy rings his doorbell. No, it's not a doorbell. A guy knocks on his door, says, hey, I just opened my own martial arts school as a master. I think his name is, I forget his name. He says, I would like to challenge you to a fight, in a friendly fight, and we'll both keep the results to ourselves. And Eep Man, he's already sort of like over this. And the impression the movie gives is that masters of different schools of kung fu challenging each other was fairly regular. Sometimes it would be in public and sometimes it would be in private, and the results would be kept hidden. But he doesn't want to do this, really. He knows he's going to beat this guy's ass. His wife doesn't want him to do it. For most of the movie, she's very upset whenever he has to go duel. But she's like, okay. She takes the son out of the room, he kicks everybody else out, and he beats this guy's ass. But unfortunately, there's a coincidental teenager in a tree chasing a kite who happens to look through the window and see this new master get his ass beat by Ip Man. So then he goes to town and tells everybody, Ip Man kicked this guy's ass. That gets back to the new master, who then goes to, I believe it's a restaurant that Ip Man is at, and wants justice. He's like, hey, you sullied my name. Of course, Ip Man didn't say anything. He kept his word. All of this gets disrupted when 5 strangers come to town and start challenging all the local masters. And this guy's main guy's name is Jin, I believe. And he's great. I love his character. He's just a straight up bully asshole with insecurity, but he's awesome at kung fu. So he actually just consecutively just starts beating all of the masters' asses in town. And then he is told by an old man, you haven't done shit till you beat the best. And he's like, well, who's the best? And the guy's like, Ip Man, which is kind of a dick move, if you ask me, because Ip Man, I would think the whole town knows he doesn't really like this kind of stuff. But this is probably my second favorite fight in the movie, when Jin comes to challenge Ip Man in Ip Man's front room that I love, with all the vases and pretty things. And reluctantly, Ip Man accepts, and the 4 other cronies are just left to watch, and he beats this guy's ass. Guy pulls out a sword, Ip Man pulls out a feather duster, and still beats his ass. It's a very elegant, defensive. Ip Man is not aggressive in his kung fu style. And he still beats this guy's ass. And then we get kind of a weird shift that at first seems out of place. It's almost like a cutscene. Ip Man lost his house when the Japanese soldiers came to China and started to rule. And so it jumps forward in time. But I actually think ultimately that's important to frame why he does what he does the rest of the film. So he's in poverty now with his wife and child, and he decides, I'm strong enough, I can go work. I'm not sure why he took a while to realize that, but he does, and he goes to work in what I think is some kind of a coal mine, shoveling coal thing. And there are Japanese soldiers that show up along with this like Trattorius interpreter guy from Foshan.
He was the cop, right? He played the cop earlier.
Yes. And so they're basically like, hey, the general wants to see some of your good Chinese kung fu. For every man you beat, you'll get a bag of rice. And we see a few of these fights in this, I guess it's a dojo. And these guys are pretty good, the Japanese kung fu guys that came with the general. But one of the Chinese guys beats them, and then he's killed. And that's pretty unfair, like sportsmanship wise. So when Ip Man hears about this, he's incensed. He's done. He's just, I mean, I can't imagine living under, a foreign army's rule in abject poverty where he's drinking rice water for his meal. But he snaps and he goes in and tells the general, I want to fight 10 men, every single man you've got. And depending on the translation you watched, he repeats himself, but the second time he says, I want to beat 10 men instead of fight 10 men.
Right.
And this is a brutal fight. He is hurting these men intentionally and badly. And I cackle through this entire fight. But the biggest laugh is that last dude who's in Ip Man's face and takes 40 lightning punches to the chest and ends up on his back, knocked out cold. The phantom punch thing is just, it's it happens in that fight with Jin in Ip Man's house, and it happens again in this fight where he just throws so many punches so fast that it feels inhuman. And
Mhm.
it just, I think my gut reaction to really good kung fu is always going to be laughter. I'm not entirely
Yeah.
sure why.
Mhm.
Um, so he doesn't take 10 bags of rice. He takes the one bloody bag of rice from the guy they killed, making a statement, and off he goes. Well, the general gets tired of waiting for Ip Man to come back and fight again. He really liked Ip Man's kung fu.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets do this or else ish at this point. He tells the uh, Benedict Arnold interpreter guy, go find him. And that guy's like, I don't know where he is. Gets his ass beat. Still goes and finds him. Followed up by Japanese soldiers who were following him, and Ip Man beats those guys' ass. So they have to leave now. They have to flee because now they've just beaten up the general's men. There's also this whole subplot where a friend of Ip Man has opened a cotton mill. And even after the Japanese takeover, it's one of the few businesses that's still alive. And maybe the only true comedic bit of this movie
Mhm.
is the Three Amigos
Yeah.
section where he somehow, in what feels like a week, teaches
Yeah.
kung fu to every person who works at the cotton mill. And
Mhm.
so when Jin and the bullies come to collect their fee, they're just basically doing, regular old organized crime stuff, taxing the local businesses for protection. They fight back and surprisingly beat some ass.
Mhm.
Until it pisses Jin and his 4 buddies off. Actually, at this point, he's got like 12 or 20 buddies,
Mhm.
including Tree Kite guy from the beginning.
Yeah, tree kite guy.
And there's a great moment where a fist comes out of nowhere and blasts a dude's face, and then you cut back, and it's Ip Man is shown up at the cotton mill, and it's essentially 1 versus 20. The IMDb says, and I'm not sure I buy this, but it says that Ip Man is only struck twice in the entire film, both times in the final fight with the general. I don't know how you're defining strike, but I do know that he's almost never touched by any
Mhm.
opponent throughout this movie, and I love it. Like, I love the raid kitchen fight because you sincerely feel like either man could win here. They both
Mhm.
deal some serious blows, but for the
Mhm.
most part, Ip Man is Superman, and I love it. I can't get enough of it.
Mhm.
Um, so after that big old ass beating, the general now knows Ip Man is tied to the cotton mill. Basically sets up this thing where Ip Man and him are going to fight eventually. Ip Man challenges him to a fight in the public. Japanese kung fu versus Chinese kung fu once and for all. There's another little weird subplot with his friend seemingly kidnapping his wife and kid, but then she cries and he turns around so that she can see the fight. I
Yeah.
don't I don't know why he tied her up, except that maybe she was trying to jump out of the car and he had
I think
sworn to
that's
protect
it.
her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Um,
that's it.
so it sets up a fight with the general. I bet you can't guess who won. Um,
Mhm.
that's a really cool fight. I still think the 10-on-1 is my favorite scene in the entire film.
Yeah.
But it the final fight is certainly not a letdown. Um, and that's Ip Man 1. There will be others in the future that will have diminishing returns of quality. But Chris, what were your thoughts this time through Ip Man?
You touched on one of the things, one of the top things that I love about this movie is that there's never a moment in this where Eat Man, who the movie has suggested is the best fighter, loses a fight somewhere. Like there's not any situation where it's like, oh, the stakes are dire and he lost a fight and now he's got to build himself back up so that he
Right.
can beat this guy at the end and everything. Because those type of things always typically ring false to me when you
Hmm.
have this, here is this ultimate badass, and then suddenly, like, especially in most of your crime lord movies where like the badass is going through and wasting all the henchmen and everything, and then he finally gets to the crime lord who we haven't seen fight once the
Right.
entire movie, and then like suddenly he's hanging toe to toe with the badass, and I'm like, no, 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 there's no way. And so this is one of those things where I was glad that every fight going in, was reasonably sure that he was going to win each one of them, even the ones they were trying to hype a
Right.
bit. like they weren't like there's no thought that he's going to lose there. So that is one of the number one things I like this movie. You brought up also the how this movie's plot is structured. It's very strange how this movie is structured, because you at first you're thinking, oh, this is going to be about rival martial arts schools, because the guy shows up for a friendly fight, he gets his ass beat, and as long as nobody says anything about it, we're good. But then there's the one guy who's witnessed it through the window looking for his kite, and he tells everybody. And I thought that, this was going to be like, how dare you tell people that you beat me in this fight and everything. And it kind of gets there, but it's never like, that's never a big deal. That's resolved in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And I was just sitting there thinking this is where I was like, if it's going to go this way, then how does the movie have a foundation? Because we already know Eat Man is way better than this dude. So this dude and his disciples aren't going to be able to beat him. Like, I don't know, like maybe they, thought that well, of course he didn't have, that's the thing. The whole thing, Eat Man doesn't have a school. He's just by himself with his family the whole time. People keep asking him to create a school, but he never does it. So yeah, I thought it was kind of going to be about that. And then, you see the gang show up and you're like, oh, okay, so it's going to be about this now. And then he beats that guy pretty quickly. And you're like, oh, so, and then they had so here's real world events going on that happen here where the Japanese attack, and they're occupying China and all that. I get that. All right. But yeah, I love these little things in here. I love the fact that when he's working at that coal factory or whatever it is, that his buddy sees that he's stashing food away for his family, and the guy's like, here, I'm not going to be able to finish this anyway, even though he's probably super hungry. He's like, I'm not going to be able to finish the rest of this anyway. Gives him that half a roll or whatever it is.
Actually, I made a note about this. That is a steaming hot baked potato that he's holding in his hand. There's actually a shot where there's steam coming off of it. And I wrote down, that would fucking burn your hands. Like if it was kind of lukewarm, but not like steaming hot, that would hurt. Anyway.
But yeah, I also love that. Yeah, the thing about the 10 man fight and that lightning punch thing is that we see a preview of that in the first fight, because the guys, Eat Man is taking it easy on the other dude, and once he's got the advantage on him, he does that thing but above his head. He's like, all right, this is what I would do if this were real, and then moves on. But then later on, when we actually see those blows strike, yes, it is that. I think laughter is appropriate. I feel the same way. When you brought it, you brought up the raid, and you bring up that last fight, and that fight in the kitchen is, it's like going a certain way, and then once he makes that slash, you're just like, you realize how devastating that is. I don't know what it is. Like, the movie is a magic trick to me. I could never create a fight like this ever. Like, to make it where it's like, okay, it's kind of even. And how do I make it known to the audience that something has changed here? And they do it so well. So yeah, this is the same way here. It's like all these guys are fighting, and then like, oh, now he's using that thing. He's using that lightning punch thing. You better get the fuck out at that point when he does that.
Whenever he rolls up his sleeves, you better look the fuck out, because he's done fucking around. I made a note here about the 1 versus 10 and about how much his brutality is earned. And then I wrote, I invite you to watch this scene 3 times. Once for the awesome choreography, once for Eeps finally being brutal, and once for paying attention to how much he hates doing it. Because there's so much going on. It could just be an awesome fight scene, and it would probably still be the best scene in the movie. But him finally being brutal, but the look on his face is like, I know I can do this. I'm doing this for a morally good reason, but I don't like doing this. And it's just got layers. Whereas like my entryway into this kind of movie was Iron Monkey, which is all silly. And even when the fights are brutal. It's cartoon brutality, and in this movie, you can feel some of these punches and kicks. Yeah, I freaking love it. I love the little kid on the bike in the opening, that second fight where he's fighting Jin, and then a little kid comes in on the tricycle, and they both just stop and watch as the kid comes through them and says, "Mom says don't break anything," and then the kid goes. It felt like an Edward. It felt like a what? Not Edward. It felt like a Edgar Wright moment, almost like a little comedic drop, pause in the middle of that whole fight thing. There's just so many little beats and moments that I really like.
I don't know if we've seen Martial Arts Film Freak in our comments before, but he came here for this one for obvious reasons, and he's
awesome.
been writing some comments here. And one of them is there's a great YouTube video comparing all Eat Man movies to different Superman stories. Yeah, that, I mean, it very much is like that. This guy is perfect. He can't get beat. He's and barely ever barely ever even gets hit. That's how good he is. And I would like to see that video. He also says Donnie Yen trained with Ip Man's son for several months before he had never trained in Wing Chun specifically.
Yeah, and he's stealing my thunder because that was one of my notes. That Donnie Yen is proficient in this style and learned it from Ip Man's own son. And Ip Man would go on in real life to open a school in that very cotton mill and teach. I saw a stat that said there are over. No, it's at the end of the movie. It says there's over 2 million people who are in his school's lineage. Hey Chris, I'm the guy that mailed you all those kung fu movies.
I had a feeling that it was him. Yes, I had a feeling. I didn't want to say out loud since he's not using his real name. So yes, thank you for the kung fu movies. I have watched a couple of them, but I have not been able to get through the whole stack yet.
Awesome.
Probably will at some point.
I am curious, and maybe he'll know the answer, but I was curious about the scene where the general goes to Eep in jail, and there's no translator, but the general has needed that Benedict Arnold translator, or appeared to.
Yeah.
So is this movie saying he always knew? And I'm ignorant. I think they're speaking both Mandarin and Cantonese at points during this movie.
I think they are.
But did he know one or both of those languages all along and was pretending to need the translator? Because when he speaks to Ip Man, I wasn't expecting a response, but then Ip Man replies and totally understood what was said to him, and I was like, what's going on here?
Anyway. Yeah, I got the sense that it was that scene was, I know what you're saying, and I know, and you know what I'm saying.
I see.
Without even being able to translate, because I know that you want to beat my ass. I know that you want to show that Japanese kung fu is better. You know that I'm not going to accept any kind of like bargain with you or anything. We're just gonna, we're gonna beat ass, and we'll let everything else settle through that. So that's what I got from it, but it also could just be a mistake. Like they forgot that they needed a translator, and they just
I mean, I like that interpretation though, that they understood each other without understanding the language. They understood the message. That's almost too cool. I'm just going to believe that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, that's what I choose to believe, is that it just doesn't matter. We know what each other wants, so it doesn't matter what language we're speaking. We know we understand each other. It's really kind of amazing to think about it that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So,
all right. Any further thoughts before we move into the double feature?
I don't think so. And so yeah, the double feature. Okay, there's so many martial arts movies, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to pair this up with another martial arts movie. I think that's too easy, too lazy. I don't know if anybody's going to be happy about my double feature though. A lot of this movie reminds me of Braveheart.
Oh, interesting.
Mainly because you have England is basically dictating what Scotland is doing. They're occupying Scotland all the way through. You have a man at the beginning, William Wallace, who does not want to fight, who does not want to do any of this. He's kind of brought into it by the fact that people are dying and he loses his wife. Obviously, ultimately, is what makes him motivated. Of course, a lot of Braveheart is a bunch of bullshit too.
Well, I think a lot of Ip Man is bullshit too. He never fought that general.
yeah. And then he becomes this mythical kind of character throughout the whole movie, where he's this ultimate sort of fighter. Now, once you start getting into giant battles with thousands of extras and all that, yes, it's not very Eat Manish at all. But yes, I am glad Martial Arts Film Freak is here, because maybe he's got a better double feature. And it says 2 great double features: Ong Bak for Unstoppable Protagonist. Yes, awesome. Absolutely. Also, both revolutionized martial arts cinema in the 2000s. And Heroes of the East, I have never seen this, because it's Chinese versus Japanese martial arts. So yeah, there you go. Those would be really good ones, obviously.
I've seen a couple people mention this. Donnie Yen will be in the new John Wick 4, and I'm quite excited to see what he does there. I think Braveheart is an awesome pick, because we've given ourselves so much leeway to define why we're choosing a double feature. Once you got into that made perfect sense to me. And again, the double feature doesn't have to have every beat the same, but I like that. A guy who doesn't want to fight in an occupied country finally fights and kicks some ass.
And even its ending, even the both movies' endings end in essentially what is the same place, a public square where someone is supposed to be humiliated and dies. And dies. They try to make it that our buddy Patrick texted me and said something like Poochie went on to his own planet where he was miraculously resuscitated or whatever. Like he's shot and he falls dramatically from that thing. And you're like, and we're like, well, yeah, but there's like 3 other movies after this where he went on to train Bruce Lee. So what are you trying to say here? And but the movie's like, you don't know that yet. You don't know that. And then you see him in the back of the truck and he's like, oh, I'm so wounded. But
I love how his wife has her hand on his bullet hole and no one has treated his wound at all.
Right.
No one put a gauze or a shirt or anything.
Yeah.
It's just,
squeeze that bullet out
right now and bleed out as we drive to Hong Kong.
Right. So anyway, yeah, those are the things I was thinking about. Yeah, the movies themselves have a lot of major differences, obviously, but like there's a lot of like crazy similar things in it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome pick.
So all right, now next week's homework. Now, I hope that you guys can find this movie. I looked up on Real Good, and it looks like you can find it on Showtime, and you can find it. I think you can rent it. So it's not one of these where you can find it on every streaming service, unfortunately. And man, there's so many movies I think of that are just great. Yeah. And like the streaming is not big on it. And I'm sorry about that, guys, but find the 1974, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. That's the remake, I think, that showed up on the pictures. But the 1974 version has Walter Matthau, has Robert Shaw, tying into the Sting earlier. But Walter Matthau plays a guy who works for the New York subway, and on a day where he's just showing people around, some Robert Shaw and his gang decide to like hijack a train, and they want money or they start killing hostages. And this is just gritty 1974 New York, but it's got a lot of humor in it too. A lot of humor, like you would never expect this gritty 1974 New York movie to have, but it does. So find the 1974 version. The Denzel Washington version was pretty good. The John Travolta Denzel Washington one. Pretty good.
Tony Scott, right?
Yeah, Tony Scott. Yeah. Not bad. But this is not the one that I'm asking you to watch. It's the 1974 version. Walter Matthau and Robert Shaw. That is next week. So yeah. I can't wait to talk about this. I don't know if you've ever seen this one.
I haven't. In another weird coincidence, it came on yesterday, and I was like, I know I want to see this eventually, but I moved on to something else.
Mhm.
My Google says it's also on Paramount Plus. So,
Mhm.
and if you have a premium subscription, which basically means you've added Showtime to your Hulu or Roku or Amazon, then you can
Mhm.
watch it in those places as well. I'm looking forward to this. I like the
And
diversity.
Jonathan, who's working behind the scenes today, says he says that The Taking of Pelham 1974 is my top 5 of all time. So
Wow, it is 100 on Rotten Tomatoes with
it is
42
a
reviews.
great movie. I don't think it gets talked about enough from all those movies in the 70s where things were getting grittier and like
Mm.
more, because they didn't have to worry about the Hays Code anymore and all that. Like you get your usual like, oh, Taxi Driver and the Nashville and blah blah blah. It's like those are the movies that you hear about most of the time. And Godfather and Taking a Pelham has gotten, I think it's gotten a lot of like love over the years. It's not like nobody ever talks about this movie or anything, but it does seem like it doesn't get enough love. So we're gonna talk about that one next week. So
Excellent homework. Looking forward to that. And we got some time for some questions. How about we dive into that?
yeah, let's do some questions.
What is the worst food you've seen someone tuck into at the cinema? That feels like it's written by a British person. Uh, this it even says this question brought to you by my horrified friend who just witnessed someone pull out a portion of fish and chips out of their bag
Ian,
and
is that
skunk up
you?
the whole screening with grease and vinegar smells. I'd have not heard the phrase "tuck into" at. That's un-American.
That's what they're doing though. They're tucking in the stuff.
I guess.
Smuggling. They're smuggling the stuff in. Over the years as an usher, I stumbled on a lot of like, things. I don't think I had anything that was just downright like, weird. They have a steak dinner and salad in here. I've never seen anything like that. Um, but like I think I've seen Chinese food before, people bringing in Chinese food. Um, but most of the stuff that you see that's like unusual is usually not food. Like I remember being shocked, I say, when I went to go into Mrs. Doubtfire. It was a sold out Mrs. Doubtfire that just emptied out, and I had to go clean it. And there was like 8 beer bottles on the front row, just all lined up on the floor. And I was like, you guys are sitting in the front row drinking beer, watching Mrs. Doubtfire. That's really interesting to me. But the this just allows me to tell the grossest stuff that I've ever run across was when we had the movie 8 Seconds, the Luke Perry rodeo bull riding movie. When it came to my small town theater in Franklin, Tennessee, it drew quite the crowd. I mean, this movie did not do like amazing nationally, but at my theater it sold out all the time, 8 Seconds. And I had to go in and clean those theaters afterwards. And you can only imagine how much tobacco spit that I ran into going through there. I was those times I had to cut back the gag reflex a little bit.
That is one of the worst smells on the
It
planet.
is. Yeah.
Man. We did have when I was not a GM for a super long time, but maybe a couple years. But we did have one rowdy audience where somebody in the back threw a beer bottle from the back up to the front.
Oh God!
And this is the only time I ever did this. I shut the movie off. And went into the auditorium and did my whole self-righteous Mr. Smith goes to Washington speech. And I said, I will not start this movie again until you guys tell me who did that. And like 5 people in the back corner just turned and pointed at the guy.
Yeah.
And I escorted him out. And but my actual answer to this, that just I was reminded by that when you said beer bottles.
Oh yeah.
Shelled peanuts where they just throw the shells on the floor like they're at a steakhouse.
Yeah.
And then the weirdest one was 2 empty cans of Campbell's soup.
Okay.
And I assume they ate it cold because there's not really a good way to heat that up in the container because it's metal.
No.
And my wife will occasionally eat a chicken noodle soup cold out of the can, which disgusts me.
Yeah.
But that's
Would
probably
not.
the weirdest one that I've seen.
Um,
In the comments, we got anything?
yeah, I got a few here. Frack Creek. Ooh, this question was on Discord. I used to work in a theater, and I saw someone bring in spaghetti and meatballs and a pouch of foil. Wow, wow.
Just asking to stain your clothes when you do that.
Yeah. Objective Sid says, went to Ghostbusters as a kid with my late aunt, and since it was around dinner time, she brought in and made sure we ate chicken parmesan. Wow. Good God, man. That's freaking crazy.
That's absurd. Oh man.
And JC asked me, Chris, how did you pronounce foil? I said foil. Is that wrong?
No, foil.
Foil.
Now the word has lost all meaning.
It has lost.
Let's move on.
Okay.
The farthest into a film you were loving that a film did something to make you hate it?
Fairly recently, Dr. Sleep was this kind of movie for me. I loved probably 3/4 of this movie. I thought it was like just atmospheric, beautiful. Rebecca Ferguson's performance. I loved everything about this movie. And then they were like, let's tie this shit back into The Shining and like have everybody have those Shining feels. Then go back to the hotel overlook and have to recreate all that Shining stuff. And I'm like, man, guys, you had me. You had me. I had this whole movie. I was like, man, I love everything about this. It's so different. It's kind of tied in The Shining, but it's not totally The Shining. And now you've made it The Shining 2, and I don't like it anymore. I don't like this movie anymore.
I hate when that happens. I mean, Passengers famously did this to me. I think Signs, well, the ending of Signs undoes all the goodwill it built up in the first 2/3 for me. But I also just remembered Eyes Wide Shut is probably the most famous example of this. I walked out of that going, I was on that journey. I was with him. He was making some weird choices, but I was interested in that journey. And then to me, I'm on an island. The end kind of just flicks all that away and says, screw it, let's go have sex. And there's probably a deeper meaning that I miss, but I don't care because it completely killed that movie for me.
There was not that this has anything to do with the question, but I saw a thing that yesterday on Twitter about Eyes Wide Shut was just kind of trending for some reason.
Oh, interesting.
And there was somebody who had put on showed like the Tom Cruise walk through London was like him on a treadmill while the images you had the rear view projection or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
On it. I was just like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it as him I thought it was always like a set or something like that. They were on Pinewood Studios or something. I don't know. But anyway, Objective Sid says, I have quit films, but mostly books in which they kill animals. Yeah, it's kind of tough. Never read Where the Red Fern Grows, by the way, because you'll have read the whole book and then then you'll have to quit when it's like they get to the worst part. But Josh Zero says literally all the way to the last second of Paranormal Activity, the first one. Such a creepy new vibe, and then at the last second, jump scare with a twisted demonic face for no reason. Yeah, absolutely. I hate that shit too. Then Castro says, still upset over that mass death scene in Spontaneous. I'm sure I could think of something else, but it's not coming to me yet. Yeah, I can see that.
I see one that you connect with.
Do you? I don't know.
Objective says,
I read Where the Red yeah, exactly. I've read that book twice as a kid. No, just that's probably the first time I ever cried at anything, like reading or watching movies, watti. I was just like, but you set up these dogs and they're awesome, and why did you do that? That
reminds me of the Friends episode where Phoebe, they're watching Old Yeller, but Phoebe's mom always turned it off before the end, and so she's watching. She's like, "Hey, where are you going with that rifle?" Yeah, we have time for one more.
All right.
what two actors who were nominated or won for Best Actor, or I'm going to add Best Supporting in the same year,
Okay.
would you like to have seen switch roles? And I think this is an amazing question that required some research. But the example is Gene Hackman and Jack Nicholson with Unforgiven and A Few Good Men. That is a very interesting take.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went through the oscars.org site and looked at a bunch of like different years, and it's weird how very few you could switch, or at least feel like you could switch, and
Yeah.
it would be, and the best one I could come up with, I think this would be interesting. Robert Forster playing the Burt Reynolds role in Boogie Nights, and Burt Reynolds playing the Robert Forster role in Jackie Brown.
Huh.
Um, um, and I think Burt Reynolds obviously is going to be way different than Forster is in Jackie Brown, but I'm wondering if Tarantino could shape that in some way where he's more, I don't know. I think Forster is perfect for Boogie Nights. I think he would have drilled that Jack Horner role.
Yeah.
I think he would have got drilled it. Yeah, boom. He would have drilled it. But I'm not sure about Burt Reynolds. But I think he's of the same age. Where Quentin Tarantino was going for on that. And I think he would have been able to nail it. I think if Tarantino just said, "Look, I think he would have been able to shape that performance, and Burt Reynolds would have gone along. Probably would have gone along with it. I don't know. I don't know if Burt Reynolds was notoriously difficult or anything like that. I don't know if that was true, but I think that would be a good one.
Yeah, I also think Burt Reynolds said something, I feel like, about maybe regretting that movie. Anyway, my answer would be, and this is the reason I changed the question to allow supporting actor. Jennifer Lawrence and Amy Adams were both in American Hustle, a David O. Russell film.
Yep.
And I'm not a big David O. Russell fan personally, as a person.
Right.
But this is a movie that I've seen several times, and Amy Adams plays Christian Bale's lover and con partner, and Jennifer Lawrence plays Christian Bale's wife and mother of, well, he adopted the child. He didn't, it's not his child. Anyway, and Jennifer Lawrence's character is erratic and drunk and impulsive, and Amy Adams' character is sexy and intentional and whip smart, and I think they could both play the other one's role in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And it might even be better that they switched roles in that too. Thinking about that movie,
I just think of that scene where she's walking around her apartment with a drink, singing "Live and Let Die" to her kid on the couch, and I see Amy Adams doing that perfectly. I just think it would work.
There's a not real one in the comments. The Julia Roberts and Kathy Bates switching in Misery and Pretty Woman. That would be funny for sure. Would be hilarious. This unfortunately, this is one of those
full frontal.
Yep. Unfortunately, this is one of those questions that's going to be hard for the commenters to come up with, because they're going to have to do the same research on the fly that we got lots of time to do. So anyway, that's a good question though. It made me go through a bunch of Oscar history and go, wow, did that guy really get nominated for that movie?
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week. Once again, thank you guys so much for coming out to comment on YouTube and Twitch, making it lively. I was worried there for a second, but you guys came through. Came a lot of comments came in on that. So thank you so much for coming out. That's going to do it for this episode. Next week is The Taking of Pelham 123 from 1974. Walter Matthau, Robert Shaw. Do not see the wrong one. But we will see you next time.
Bye. My phone's ringing. It's unprofessional.
Bye.
Bye. So long.